Now, chaos in the Commons last Parliament has ended into a farce as Tory and SNP MPs angrily walked out of a debate on motions calling for a ceasefire in Gaza. And the Commons Speaker, Sir Lindsay Hoyle, is facing calls to quit his role and was even forced to apologise to MPs after he broke parliamentary precedent, we're told, after lobbying from Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer. So who's at fault? And will the Speaker survive? 57 MPs have signed a motion calling for no confidence in him already. Well, joining me right now to discuss this is Conservative MP for Bracknell, former Colonel James Sunderland. Good morning to you, James.
Good morning, Julia. I'm speaking from a very, very wet Sandhurst in a car with rain hitting the roof, but delighted to be on your show.
Great to have you join us. Thank you very much indeed. Just briefly, I mean, without going through the who did what when, we've done all that on the show already. What do you think went wrong yesterday in the Commons?
Julia, I think yesterday was much more significant than even the media have realised. It is a constitutional crisis, in my view. What happened yesterday was an abomination from so many perspectives. We had the initial suggestion that Labour had coerced the Speaker into effectively ruling against the standing order, parliamentary protocol. We then had a situation where the Speaker made a catastrophic decision, in my view. And the backlash that we saw yesterday in the Commons with MPs walking out and the Speaker being summoned back to the chair to apologise was just the tip of the iceberg.
We've been talking a lot about what the pressures were happening, not just behind the scenes on Sir Lindsay Hoyle from Labour, but also the pressures on Labour MPs and many other MPs from outside, from the baying mob, from threats that they've been facing. Lots of MPs saying they were fearful to leave the chamber last night, to leave the House of Parliament, because they feared for their own safety because of threats. How seriously is that taken in Parliament? How widespread is it? And what should be done about it?
Well, Julia, I've been very outspoken about MP security. I was the last MP to see David Amess alive, and that hit home with me. And what I would say to you is that I don't blame the Speaker at all for wanting to do the right thing in terms of seeking to protect MPs and to maintain that, you know, their ability to go about their business. But what happened yesterday just set so many hairs running. I mean, the clear insinuation yesterday was somehow that because Keir Starmer was able to manipulate parliamentary process, that Labour MPs are somehow more important or their security is taken more seriously than Conservative MPs. And that might sound like a bold statement, but if you consider how many attack ads Labour has run on Conservative MPs, how much disingenuous, toxic politics has been brought to bear over the free school meals vote and the U-turn on sewage. The list goes on. And in my humble view, what happened yesterday was very partisan, was very unfortunate, and was a disgrace to Parliament.
I mean, it seems to me, as a long-time political watcher and as a voter, that, you know, a plague on all your houses. Everyone was playing politics, SNP, Labour, government, everyone was doing it. The question is, though, did Sir Lindsay Hoyle, did he basically... I agree with you. I think he was trying to do the right thing. I think he's an honourable and a good man. And he's so much better than the last Speaker. Low bar, admittedly, with John Bercow. And he is someone who a lot of people like, which may well save his skin even after this. And he has apologised. He's been showing great humility. And I think those things should be you know, noticed and abided by. But if he was pressured and was threatened with, you know, you're going to lose the Commons speakership if you don't do this, you're going to lose your seat if you don't do this, or even if he felt, as he did say publicly, that and he's been saying privately to people as well, you know, that he genuinely feared for the safety of MPs if there wasn't a vote which allowed Labour MPs to vote for their version of the humanitarian ceasefire and not the SNP motion, where they would be then in the papers the next day and online as MPs, you know, not voting for a ceasefire because they would face threats. That is allowing a mob to control what happens in our parliamentary and democratic procedures. It seems to me that that is not being addressed by MPs today. That is being swept under the carpet, as it always is, and everyone's talking about procedure this, procedure that. At the end of the day, threats are being made to MPs if they don't vote the right way in the view of a mob, and MPs are giving into it.
I completely agree. When you look back on yesterday, there are so many things that went wrong and so many lessons to learn, and we need to analyse everyone very carefully indeed, as well as hold Labour to account for the clear coercion and the clear manipulation of parliamentary protocol. But what's significant here is this: we cannot allow outside influences, the threat of intimidation, mob rule, to influence how politicians do their job. And frankly, what we should have had yesterday were the motions that were agreed. We should have had a meaningful vote on Gaza, and we should have taken that as indicative of the way we people feel in the UK. In my view, and I've been an MP for 4 years, we've got to get back to a fairer, more balanced politics where we are working together cross-party, objectively, to solve these crises. Of course, yesterday's vote was meaningless anyway. It was indicative only and it has no basis in law, and nor can we necessarily influence directly from Westminster what's happening in Gaza, with the exception of putting the necessary pressure on Israel and all of the protagonists to ensure that the restraint. I mean, it's clear to me that the conflict must stop in Gaza, and it must stop now. But the wrangling and the point scoring yesterday was really disappointing, and we've got to work together as MPs to fix it.
Why must it stop now?
Well, I think that anybody watching what's happening at the moment in Gaza would realise that the death toll is horrible, the impact on people is horrible. Two wrongs don't make a right, and in my view, what we need to be doing is getting people to the table as quickly as possible to ensure a meaningful humanitarian ceasefire whereby humanitarian aid can get in and we can stop loss of life.
But James, humanitarian aid is going in and it's being stolen by Hamas, we're constantly being told by those on the ground. A meaningful ceasefire. How can you have a meaningful ceasefire and peace while Hamas, the terrorists, are still holding over 134 Israeli hostages, refuse to give them up, and are still using Palestinians as human shields, and have said they would commit another October the 7th massacre every day if they could? There isn't a deal to be done with these people.
Julia, I agree entirely. That's why the government position is about rights. You cannot have a meaningful ceasefire with a prescribed terrorist organisation that continues to hold hostages. And that is the clear British government position, which actually is shared by the Labour front bench. So you could argue yesterday that the SNP motion was deliberately divisive, and I think it probably was. You could argue yesterday that what Labour did was to manipulate the parliamentary protocol to ensure that they were able to walk away without having to divide their own party. So much is wrong here, but what we have to do is get the policy right. We have to put the necessary pressure on Israel to ensure restraint. We have to get the hostages freed. We have to get humanitarian aid in there, and we have to try and find an enduring solution to find peace in the Middle East.
But again, you're talking about pressure. But James, you're talking about pressure on Israel. Why not pressure on the Hamas leadership, on Qatar, who we still deal with as if they're not a terrorist funding and sponsoring state, who are harbouring Hamas leadership, living in their lovely, wonderful palaces and having their wonderful life, while they are deliberately using Palestinian civilians as human shields? You know, why is the pressure going on Israel to stop them trying to get back their citizens taken by Hamas? The number one call from anyone who wants peace in the Middle East should be Hamas must return the terrorists and lay down their weapons and renounce violence against Israel. That's got to be the number one. If that isn't anyone's number one, they don't really want peace.
I can tell you with complete confidence that that pressure is being brought to bear on Qatar and through Qatar. You've got Arab countries that are meeting. You've got the Americans, you've got the Germans, you've got the French, you've got the Brits. You've got Western nations all putting clear pressure on Qatar, on Hamas and on the Israelis. But what we can't have is a situation whereby we are continuing to see loss of life and we're continuing to see the indiscriminate nature of what we're seeing in Gaza. We have to respect life. We have to do what we can, which is why yesterday was so disappointing, because how fantastic would it have been for the House cross-party to have not divided, to have not been polarised, and to have got together cross-party to support the government position, which I think is the right way to go.
I'm going to say, James, I really appreciate you joining us. I disagree. I don't like it when there's unity in the House of Commons. I think that usually means bad decisions being made, actually. I don't think unity is itself a good thing. People saying what they really think and voting for what they really want is, I think, rather more healthy in a democracy. But, James Sunderland, I so appreciate you joining us from a rain-swept car. Thank you very much indeed.